Hey everyone, excited to be back for this week's edition of Frequently Asked Questions for Commercial Real Estate. In today's video, what I want to do is talk about a topic that's extremely important and one that's going to be extremely important for many years to come, and that is tokenization of commercial real estate. It is a topic that has become much more prevalent in commercial real estate circles as blockchain technology is kind of permeated in a variety of different industries. And one for the commercial real estate industry is this topic right here, which is tokenization. So we're going to talk a little bit about what tokenization is, and then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the hurdles that we have to overcome in order to make it a much more prevalent strategy within the commercial real estate industry. But before we do that, I would greatly appreciate if you could like and subscribe to this channel. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm and ensures more and more people can hear this message and learn about the many facets of commercial real estate. So now you've done that, go ahead and like and subscribe below. Let's go ahead and dive right into this episode. All right, so you may be wondering, what exactly is tokenization? Well, tokenization itself is a process whereby you fractionalize the ownership interest of a particular property through what's known as a digital token. So, for example, just to give you an example, so that's a little bit easier to follow along with. Let's imagine you have $1 million property. Historically, what you would be able to do if you wanted to fractionalize interest is you would do something known as tenants in common, a TIC, where you could have 30 or 40 people buy into this fractionalized interest of this property, and then you'd have a piece of ownership within this particular this property. Now, the problem with that, the implementation of that strategy is that it makes it extremely liquid. It's still very hard for you to be able to sell off your individual interest within that property without taking a significant loss, usually a 20 or 30% discount in order to offload the property very quickly. So what tokenization hopes to solve is to essentially make real estate a lot more liquid. So in the case of, let's say, this $1 million property, what you could do is take this $1 million property, create it as a token, and then fractionalize that token into, let's say, 100 different tokens that you can now sell off to individual investors, meaning that each token would be worth $10,000. And the hope would be at some point is that, let's say you're an investor who bought into a property, have a unique token for that property that corresponds to a fractional interest within that property, and that you want to sell your interest. Well, what the hope is at some point is you could take that digital token, take it to some form of secondary market. Imagine like a Vanguard or, some of these other platforms where you can trade and exchange index funds and bonds and stocks, for example. And you could go there and sell your token to whoever wants to buy into that fractionalized interest, essentially. So as you can imagine, by making real estate more liquid, you can attract a lot more potential investors in the space, because that's one of the hurdles a lot of people have with real estate. Is they say it's a very liquid investment. If they want to take their money out quickly, they would lose out on a significant amount of their equity within the property in order to sell it quickly. And so by making it more liquid and allowing for fractionalized interests at smaller scale, so the hope would be that you could buy $1,000 worth of ownership into let's say $100 million project, therefore opening up the floodgates for those who maybe don't have $1 million to buy a building. Maybe you only have $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000 to invest in commercial property. Thus, it opens it up to the general populace to be able to invest in commercial real estate a lot more easily than it has been historically. So those are some of the benefits of what tokenization promises as a solution. Now, some of the hurdles that we're currently facing to be able to make this a lot more mainstream is threefold. First is the fact that tokenization is extremely expensive. Right now, there's companies out there that do these projects, but right now, the only projects where it makes sense to do something like this is on a grand scale. I think the first project that was tokenized, and don't harp on me if I don't get this exactly correct, but I believe it was a large hotel project in the Middle East, where we're talking hundreds of millions, if not in the $1 billion range of development. There's been projects that have been tokenized in Florida. There's one that was in Denver as well. So there are bigger projects that are actually being tokenized, but it really is at a larger scale, because that's the only scale at this point where it makes economic sense. Number two is that we don't currently have a functional secondary market where you can exchange these tokens. So if you are within this project and you want to sell your individual token on a secondary market. Right now, there isn't a mainstay market where you can do that. And so it's going to be a little bit more difficult for you to be able to sell off your interest if you want to do so. So we're going to have to see over the next few years as that market takes shape, and hopefully it becomes such that it becomes a way for people to exchange on a regular basis. So that's the second hurdle. And then finally, number 3 is since it is so new and it's a market that really hasn't been untapped, the regulation surrounding it is still kind of vague. Since you're tokenizing something, you would think that it would be underneath the scope of the SEC, or FINRA is traded as a security. And so right now, regulators are trying to get a feel for how exactly this market is going to be regulated. And so that's another thing that we're going to have to look out for the next several years to see how exactly that's going to be affecting your ability to be able to transact with these tokenized assets. So, again, it's a very interesting subject. It's one that I've been learning a lot more about. I'm definitely not an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it will be a strategy and something that's really going to make a huge impact in the commercial real estate industry in the future. So I'd love to hear your feedback on the video. If you actually know about tokenization and you're involved in the implementation of this strategy across a broader spectrum, I'd love to hear comments or feedback in the comments. Again, if you like this video, I'd greatly appreciate it if you like and subscribe. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm and ensures more and more people can hear this message and learn about the many facets of commercial real estate. So again, thank you all so much for tuning in and supporting the channel, and we'll see you all next time.